had Ollie on back in December. Ollie Barton Wood.
Yeah, I watched it. I mean, listened to it. Yeah, that was really cool. He's so great.
Yeah, he's a very kind of genuine, wholesome guy. Very cool guy.
Very much so.
It's funny because I was kind of listening back to a wee bit of it yesterday before we started this, just the kind of parts about where we spoke about your EP. And because I've been doing so many of these, I was kind of shocked at how badly I had edited it in terms of the sound. And it kind of got me thinking, because one of the things that's so great about your music is that you find a way to take imperfections and kind of work them into it and use them in a really positive manner.
That's cool.
When you're working on music, how do you know when an imperfection is going to intrude, and how do you know when it's going to add to it?
I think it's hard to tell, because I think it's just difficult to know how people will perceive things. I think as well, when you're creatively involved, I think you always do, view something differently to someone who's not been a part of that creative process. So I think, to be honest, I really struggled with the whole rawness of the record at first, just because I'd never really obviously gone through this process before, and I think in my head I had all of these insecurities and kind of uncertainties kind of floating around, to the point where, you know, it does take a lot, or it took a lot for me to kind of just let those flaws, I suppose, be as they were. Because I think a part of me did know that ultimately it really did add to who I am as a person and who I am as an artist, and the reality of me, which I think is kind of, it's not always easy to accept imperfections. So it did take a while to kind of go, you know what, let's really roughen it up a bit and not have that much reverb on the vocals and not have all this vocal layering to kind of disguise me, I suppose. So I think ultimately that the whole process was quite actually challenging, and it wasn't really something that I knew every time there was an imperfection I was like, oh, that's really great. I was actually more just like, oh no, this is so scary, but it's cool.
Was that something that, because you've recorded a few times before but you hadn't put stuff out, when you'd gone into a studio previously, was that stuff that had kind of been ironed out a little bit?
I mean, maybe at the time I thought that, but probably if I listened back to it, I'd probably think, oh my goodness, I don't sound too hot there. But I mean, probably, yeah, it was never really a goal of mine in the past to create something that was as raw and spacious as I think this EP is. I think, yeah, that was never really something I was striving for, I think, until fairly recently. I think that probably came with just a kind of general change in taste of music as well.
When you went into the process, where was your kind of headspace at? Did you know by that point that it was going to be a little bit more raw, or were you still very much thinking about it was going to be a little bit more cleaned up than it ended up being?
I think I got a wee bit overexcited would probably be the right way to describe my mindset. I was just experimenting. Like, I just was through everything at it, you know. I ultimately knew and came to the conclusion that the way that it turned out was the way that felt right. But I think I had to go through that process of trying to, I think it's easier to like put everything there and then take things away and kind of what actually needs to be here. What do I enjoy most about this, and what's just kind of there for the sake of it, rather than I quite like that process as opposed to trying to be extremely minimal from the start. But I don't know. I've only, like I said, that was one of my first times going through that process. So I think I'm still figuring out how I want to do things in the future.
That kind of works nicely in parallel with the lyrical themes, though, because a lot of this EP is about kind of finding things out and kind of looking at your identity and unpacking aspects of it that you maybe hadn't previously.
Mm-hmm.
So you've mirrored that almost in the recording process of it.
Yeah, I think ultimately that's why I came to the conclusion that it should be that way. I think I had a lot of insecurities about being another kind of sad singer-songwriter type, and I felt like a wee bit of pressure to make something maybe a bit new and different. And I think often when you overthink things and try too hard to be something, it ends up actually doing the opposite. It certainly wasn't what I envisioned at the start, but I'm very pleased that it turned out that way.
When does an idea become a demo? Like, when do you categorize like a melody or a lyrical thing that you've come up with? When does that, at what point will you put the demo sticker on it and kind of categorize that as an initial kind of version of a song?
Usually as soon as I record it on my phone. All the demos that we send back and forth to the label and management and everyone else in the team are always in iPhone form, voice note form. And I think that's mainly just for kind of continuity, you know, like this is the bare bones of what we're working with. So yeah, just as new as that really. But I think, yeah, just general structure, rather than, you know, I've got tons of voice notes on my phone that I wouldn't say were a demo just because they're literally just one line or two lines or something. But yeah, that's most of my demoing is just on my phone, and then sometimes move to GarageBand if I'm feeling adventurous.
Well, will you ever write anything down, or do you always record it? Like, even if you say you've got a lot of kind of just single lines.
I sometimes write lyrics down. The number of times I've written songs and I don't have a record of the lyrics anywhere is quite crazy. I just remember them. So I have tried to get into the habit of writing things down, but it's actually not really something I do very often. I did when I was wee, when I decided, right, that's it, I'm going to be a songwriter, so I'm going to write a song every day this week, and I wrote all the lyrics out in that book. I've still got that somewhere. It's just honestly atrocious, but that was the first time and probably the last time I decided to write songs down.
That's wow. So how long will you go before you commit it to voice recording then, if you're saying that you can just keep it in your head?
I suppose that is the way I end up remembering them. Is, yeah, actually now that we're saying that, it's not that I just have a photographic memory. It's probably because that is my form of writing lyrics down, is just recording it onto a voice note and then listening back hundreds of times. I don't ever find myself trying to remember my lyrics when I'm singing them. It just feels quite natural, but I think that's because I'm just listening to stuff back all the time or just jamming it with myself. So I don't feel like I go through that process of having to remember my lyrics, but it will be because of that. I'm just listening back to it on my phone all the time.
Do you think it's because it's coming from such a raw place? Is that also what's allowing it just to stick like that?
Maybe, and maybe just because, you know, sometimes I don't know if you find this when you listen to lyrics, you just don't really know what someone means by that, or it could mean multiple things, but I suppose only the writer knows what that means and knows it on a deeper level, so that it kind of does just stick a wee bit more, or it makes more sense and probably just easier to remember, just more natural, I suppose.
Do you get a sense of that a lot when you're committing them in the studio? Do you know exactly where every line and what it kind of relates to? And are you kind of brought back to a lot of experiences when you're during that process?
Yeah, I definitely. Yeah, I mean, every line comes from somewhere, you know. It always means something to me, even if it doesn't make sense. It could, you know, sound like total rubbish to someone else, but I think it's somewhere deep within me. It makes sense in some way. And yeah, there are some songs where there'll be random lines that maybe don't feel like they fit in with the narrative of the song. It has a very specific meaning. And, you know, there's a couple of lines throughout one song that have different meanings rather than it being a continuous kind of story, which I've been doing a wee bit more of recently, trying to keep the songs more concise with what they're about, because I think sometimes my brain has a habit of going off and a million directions when I'm writing, and I feel like this about that, but I also feel like this, but that was Always Lovely, for example, is like the oldest song on the EP, and that's definitely one that I feel is lyrically like a wee bit jumpy, whereas I think the other ones have more of a story that you can kind of follow.
Does that change the catharsis you get from it, though, when every line kind of carries a different meaning, or it's related to a different experience?
Yeah, there's I suppose a different kind of feeling that I get from singing that song, to be honest, compared to Seamless, for example, because I feel when I wrote Always Lovely, I was trying to avoid being clear and open about multiple things I was feeling at the time, by using lyrics that weren't very on the nose. I still connect to it in a big way, but it's less exposing, I feel, compared to Seamless, which is more, this is what this song is about, and now everyone knows about it.
Do you almost connect to it in a different way, though? Like you connect to the fact that you were at a place where you couldn't, fully be open, instead of connecting what you're writing about?
Yeah, I think so. And because my brain, obviously, when I wrote the song, was jumping about, and there were different meanings throughout the song. So, when I'm performing it, it's kind of the same experience. The last kind of chorus of Always Lovely always is the most impactful bit for me, and sticks out as it almost like when I'm performing it, that kind of peak of the song where I'm really connecting with it. And I'm unsure why that is. I think it's because in my head it was a very, very clear image of what that bit of the song was about, and that probably connects to me. And I do think the lyrics are probably more on the nose at that point as well, just saying always lovely, feeling pretty enough for you kind of thing. It's more obvious, I think, what I'm saying there.
Is that the clearest image you have out of the whole song?
I think so. I think that end section and the kind of choruses are, the meaning behind them is more crystal clear, I suppose.
Do you feel the headspace changing slightly as a result of that when you're performing it?
Yeah, totally. Transported back to being, I don't know what I was, 19, totally insecure and a bit all over the place, which makes sense.
Do you feel like you have a better understanding of yourself now?
Well, I think probably similarly to a lot of people, this past year has brought up a lot of things that God knows if I would have, addressed them if the pandemic hadn't happened. I presume I would have addressed them eventually at some point, but it's just kind of, this kind of space and time to think that everyone's had recently, or at least obviously a lot of people. I think I've still got a wee bit of a way to go with that, but I think so. I think I definitely have made progress from when I wrote the EP, and even from when I recorded it, I think I have. But yeah, it's been a bit of a crazy time.
Maybe nobody will have midlife crises now. We're getting it all out the way at the moment.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. Just get it out our system now.
Do you think that's why you've maybe moved toward clearer songwriting in some ways, though? As you kind of start to understand yourself more, is that like, you were saying that some of the stuff you write now is a bit more, I can't think of the expression, less subtle almost?
Yeah, I think I've said a couple of times now that I find that just being quite direct and quite honest is quite a scary thing, but also I get a lot of strength from it as well. And singing songs and like that in front of people, and then realizing, oh, I'm still alive. I'm not dead. This is great. I get a lot of comfort actually from being able to express myself in that way. Yeah, I'm very grateful to be able to have that, and to even have a small number of people listening. It's kind of, it's nice.
Always Lovely as well. That was recorded by candlelight, right?
It was fairy lights.
Fairy lights.
Yeah, they're fairy lights that we have in the living room that my mum put up one Christmas, I think years ago, and we realised that they actually just make the room. So they're now going to be an all year round kind of feature.
But when you're choosing what points in the recording process you're going to tackle a certain song or a certain part, are you thinking about how the environment at that time will relate to kind of the message of the song or what you're wanting to convey with it?
Yeah, well, that was kind of why we wanted to do it. Well, why I wanted to do it at home was to kind of just have my surroundings impact me in a positive way, which would obviously impact the music in a positive way. With Always Lovely, I knew that we would be recording it in one take, which stresses me out all the time. You know, I just I had to mentally prepare for it, basically. And I think, yeah, just dimming the lights, having the fairy lights there. I think it was, I can't remember if the take we used, I was just in the room myself or whether Ollie was there as well. I just knew that that was coming, so we kind of didn't want, because everyone knows that I get a bit uncomfortable recording, so everyone was like, let's not talk about Always Lovely really, and when we find a moment to do it, let's just do it, and like not kind of, yeah, and for me not to anticipate it too much, but of course I was anticipating it. So yeah, just making the environment a wee bit more dimly lit and nice, I think, was helpful.
Is that spontaneity that you're kind of speaking about there, you know, where you're going to try and grab a moment to record it? Is that something that informs quite a lot of the decisions you make during the recording process?
I think so. I think the whole process was quite relaxed that way. Are we going to do bass just now, or you know, we can do that, or can we get this guitar off this person? And I don't know, it was all like fairly spontaneous, but not relaxed in the sense that, you know, we were lazing about, and not, we did have some structure, you know. Yeah, sometimes we'll just be like, oh, I actually feel like recording this right now, or I feel like I need a cup of tea right now, so I'm just gonna leave the room and come back and maybe do vocals if I feel like it, kind of thing.
How long did you record for?
We had 10 days to do it. I think we ended up doing it in 8 or 9 days, but the first day was just setting up the studio.
That's pretty good so that's basically 7 songs in 7 days.
Yeah, yeah. One of them we did that we ended up needing to re-record because I had company car. I had this vision of doing a mad guitar solo in it, and I quickly realised later on that maybe that wasn't the intended version that needed to be released into the world. So I ended up recording that with Kyle, Edwin Organ.
Oh yeah.
And just so I recorded that in his bedroom, and Ollie mixed it. So, but we still did all of those songs in that time.
How long after did you kind of realise that you were going to need to redo it?
Probably a couple of weeks, maybe months. It actually did take a while to get that one to a point where we were all happy to go with it. Yeah, so that was the last track to be completed.
It's funny you have a song called Company Car on it, and you had a breakdown during the middle of the recording process, didn't you? With the car.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I thought you meant mental breakdown. I was like, yeah, how did you know so many? With Ollie in the car. Oh my God. I was low-key mortified, but also very pleased that he was there to push the car up the hill.
How steep a hill?
Do you know Cross Maloof in Shawlands? No. Wasn't that steep. I mean, it was steep enough, you know, it would roll back into the traffic behind us. But some other guy also came out of his car and helped Ollie push it up the hill while I was just sitting steering at the front. Oh God, it was awful.
How come, if this was during the recording process, where were you going? I thought you would have kind of been in the room pretty much non-stop.
Yeah, I was getting a guitar because of lockdown. Actually, my acoustic guitar that I usually use was in a friend's studio that I couldn't get access to. So I had to borrow someone else's. James, the chap that plays guitar for me in my band, I just was going round to his to get his. I think it was a 12-string, but it didn't have 12 strings on it, and that was the guitar we used for Cubicle. So actually, the guitar I usually perform live with isn't on the EP. So interesting fact, nobody cares. Yeah.
Does that change things a little bit though? We were kind of speaking about how you're recording at home and stuff to try to make this such a comfortable process, but then there's always going to be curveballs like that are thrown at you where things happen that you don't expect and you're kind of forced to deal with these challenges.
Yeah, as well, because I needed that guitar. Well, I thought I needed the guitar to do Always Lovely as well, because that's usually the guitar I play it on. And because I didn't have access to it, I ended up using the nylon string that I bought years ago when I first started playing as a solo artist. I thought I needed a guitar that was easier to finger pick with, because I just could not find an acoustic guitar that it felt easy to play. And I think I just wasn't coming across many great acoustic guitars. Yeah, so I bought that nylon Ibanez quite a few years ago, never expecting to actually need it or use it for this recording, but we ended up using it, and I think it's nice to have a bit of variation actually that maybe we wouldn't have had, if those obstacles weren't there.
Did you write Always Lovely on that?
I think I wrote it on my acoustic that isn't on the EP. I think I wrote probably most of the songs on that guitar, and it's not on the EP, funnily enough.
Is that what Tribute was written on?
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, actually that is the guitar. The guitar in the Tribute recording, iPhone recording, is the one that I usually write and perform with. But I didn't have it during the recording process.
How long after writing Tribute did you record that demo?
I think it was the same day.
Wow. It really does feel like, I think me and Ollie spoke about it as well, it's like capturing a song right at the moment as it's kind of being born into the world,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I always really love going back to demos when I first write it, because I just think the way songs develop over time without you really realising it, just the way you perform it and the way you play it does gradually change. And it's interesting to go back of how and see how it was originally intended. So I kind of like that that's the version that is out there, because I think even now I probably do play it slightly differently.
In what way?
Just vocally phrase things. Sometimes it can be slightly different. I can change like the melody a wee bit, but not too much. It doesn't take it too far away. But I think if I was to go into a studio now and record Tribute, I probably would feel really uncomfortable about it. I think just the version the iPhone version is the version that I like listening to. Yeah, I don't really want to know what it would sound like if I recorded it now.
It's interesting that you're saying you quite often go back to those demos to see how the songs have changed. Was that something you did before you went into recording? Did you kind of go through and listen to all the demos?
Yeah, well, the demos that my management were looking at and the ones that we were sending to the label, Chris McCourt, were all kind of very early demos of the songs, which was something that I had to be quite conscious about as well, because obviously, that's the version of the songs that everyone's hearing, but naturally the way I've come about playing them is actually quite different without even realising it. So that was quite interesting, trying to what do you call it? It was a bit of demo-itis going on, I think. Happens.
You bring some of the... Yeah, you kind of bring some elements of the demos in. I'm trying to think. It's on Been Thinking About You, isn't it? You've kind of got the screams and stuff that you take in from the demos.
Yeah, that was one of the demos I just did on GarageBand, just myself, and I was, left to my own devices, screaming into a mic, and I just ended up liking the tone of them. And I think Ollie did as well, so we thought, let's just stick them in.
Is there some laughing on there as well?
Yeah. Yeah. That was actually Ollie that captured me laughing at one point and thought it sounded kind of cool. kind of edgy.
Just gives you a sense of the atmosphere, I guess, doesn't it?
Yeah, I like it. I kind of like that it sounds, I like the way that my laugh sounds, which is so strange because I hate my laugh. So the fact that we captured this one moment in time when my laugh is kind of like, I don't know, cool. Like, yeah, get that in, get a record of that.
How is that a similar thing that opens Cubicle, I think? You kind of have some noises at the start of that. It's almost like room tone, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and Ollie's speaking at the start as well.
What's he saying?
He's saying, what's going on? Over the top of a tape recorder track. Did we record it? Ollie sent me a tape recorder, which was really, really lovely of him, just because I liked the sound of them, and we thought maybe we would use aspects of that on the record. So there's that kind of tape recorder sound at the beginning of Cubicle as well, which probably makes it sound kind of demo-y. Demo-y.
It kind of comes back to what you're saying as well about, the guitars, where you like the fact that not everything sounds the same on it. You're kind of bringing in these different textures. It's a similar thing. It's kind of just broadening it out a little bit and adding something different into the mix. Especially when you come to the last song, it's kind of quite difficult to do that.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you think so.
That was written after a night out, right?
Yeah.
I remember speaking to Stuart from Van Ives once, and he was saying how he quite often writes when he's hanging because it's a way of kind of purging those, like, the fear, basically. Is that a fair assessment? Do you kind of feel the same way?
Yeah, I think so. It was a roller coaster of emotions. That it was one of those songs actually I wrote and I thought this is never going to see the light of day, because I was being really, like, I don't know, maybe snobbish isn't the right word, but I was just like, oh my goodness, I just need to, like, get my feelings out over a C add 9 G D kind of progression just for a second, like, let me have this moment. And I recorded the song just into my phone, sent it to management, and then I just completely forgot about it. I didn't think about it again, and then they were like, this is a tune, by the way. And I was like, that's so strange. I think that was not prejudice, that's the wrong word, but I think it's like insecurity of, I don't know. Sometimes I'm not always the best judge of what... Did
you just think it was too simple? Like what you were saying there about the chorus?
Yeah, I think so. I felt embarrassed. Which is so silly, just totally silly.
So that's kind of what works about it, though. The fact that you put down those simple chords and then you sing quite a mix of complicated emotions atop of
it. Yeah, that's why I like it now, and I definitely don't feel that way about music anymore. I think we're often taught that there's good and bad, or kind of music that's simplistic is, in pop music and stuff like that. I think there is a bit of a stigma in certain music circles perhaps about stuff like that. So I think I had it ingrained in me a little bit that, oh, this is too pop, this is too cheesy, this is too this, that, and the next thing. I think the quicker we get over that kind of attitude, the better.
Can you see that happening?
I don't know, because it's not everyone thinks like that. I don't know, maybe I'm just projecting my feelings and kind of insecurities that I've had rather than what everyone else thinks, because I don't really know if other people feel like that.
Is it just music people that think that way, do you think?
Yeah, well, I think maybe music fans, maybe intense music lovers might have some thoughts about things like that. I don't know. People should just, if they like it, and that's great. I think just with that song, I did quickly dismiss it because I thought it would be seen as too poppy or too cheesy. I don't know if other people have had that experience or not. I'm maybe just talking into a void, but yeah.
Well, the experience you kind of talk about in that song as well, I think it's almost about not knowing someone anymore. You've got that line about the stranger and how someone's a stranger again. Was that triggered by a specific experience, or is that kind of a collection of feelings coming together that results in this kind of realization?
No, that it was triggered, I suppose, from a very specific experience. But I suppose you can have that kind of experience with a multitude of different kinds of relationships. But in this, it was a romantic relationship. That kind of feeling before you get to know someone, of not quite knowing someone, and then all of a sudden no one knows you better than this person, and when that relationship comes to an end, it's almost like, oh, I feel like we've gone back to the beginning in a sense, even though I knew all of this stuff, but now that we're in this different space, it doesn't, it almost feels like I don't know all of that stuff that I've just learned.
Feels like a different life.
Yeah, totally.
You mirror that in the song as well. Like, if you look at how that song begins and how it ends, it's almost unrecognizable. Like the progression, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. It starts, do you mean because it starts quite stripped back and then yeah, I think that was a bit of a release moment for me when I wrote the song, and also the song musically itself. I think on the EP there's a bit of a release there. I don't know if other people feel that have listened to it.
It's like an explosion.
Yeah, just kind of like, okay, this I don't feel bad right now. I don't feel necessarily good, but I'm feeling something. I'm feeling I'm feeling like I'm letting go. There's a weight lifted, I suppose.
Is that often the headspace that kind of triggers songwriting as well sometimes? I don't feel bad, I don't feel good, I just feel something and I need to... Is there almost a frustration that can come from that kind of pushes you to write?
Yeah. Well, something that Tom Petty said once, which kind of resonated with me, was that he had to always kind of wait until that feeling had passed before he could properly write about it, which I thought was interesting. I think I've been definitely in that situation, but also I've definitely written as well when I'm in the, like, very much in the middle of something and having that comfort of being able to vent those feelings in some way when you're feeling it. But I do think there are certain topics which I think are easier to write about after you've experienced them and you come out of a more in a different kind of more balanced headspace, I suppose. I think it depends what it is, you know.
Have you noticed like any patterns in the songwriting itself from the songs that you write when you're in the midst of something and those that you write afterwards upon reflection?
I think the tone is maybe sometimes different. I think maybe, for example, Seamless and Cubicle are really written about the same thing, even though Cubicle was about one night in particular, but it was more to do with my feelings surrounding the same situation, a breakup, essentially. And I think you can hear that Seamless is very much I'm feeling kind of shit about this right now, and I'm writing about it right now. Whereas Cubicle, I feel like, has a kind of more reflective tone to it.
I think as well with Seamless, it feels like you're more writing to someone, if that makes sense. Like it's more writing at a person than Cubicle is.
Yeah.
Is that just the result of them kind of consuming your thoughts more so when you're in the middle of it?
Well, I think maybe actually Cubicle is kind of worded directly towards someone the whole time as well. There is just a very, very different tone to it, I think. Yeah, because it is more... Yeah, for example, in Seamless, when I'm saying, oh, I still have your clothes, I'll be wearing your jumper kind of thing, I'm not... This person is still very, very involved with me emotionally, whereas in Cubicle, I'm literally saying, oh, I don't know you anymore. So I think that kind of shows the difference, the lyrical difference between those two.
Are you aware of that link in the moment when you were writing it? Can you see? No,
not at all. It's just literally a lot of what I've been talking about. It's just coming to me right now, spur of the moment. Not all of it, but yeah, I think now that we're talking about it, I can see that.
Yeah, it's interesting to kind of draw these connections.
Yeah, it is actually quite interesting.
Why did you bring in Jessica for Seamless as well?
So I was looking to just get into more writing sessions generally, and I think Jessica was the second person I'd ever written with. You know, like a complete stranger. I'd written with friends, but I hadn't met her before. It was an accident, really, that we ended up writing a song that ended up on the EP. It was quite a difficult process for me, really, because the style of writing was more, what's the song going to be about? it came from that angle rather than another writing session that I'd had that week was, how's this song gonna sound? Which I think is two different approaches. So I think the song I wrote with Jessica just kind of lyrically and sonically fit with what we were trying to do with this EP.
You get Ivan in there as well.
Yeah, he's also with me right now, sitting quietly next to me.
I can hear him.
Can you?
I heard him meow there, yeah. Did you live in the same house the whole way growing up?
Yeah, we moved about a bunch when I was before the age of 4. And so I've been in this house since that time, 4, 5.
Yeah, kind of adds to it then. You've
yes,
kind of got all these experience. You've literally got all your experiences there. Do you have any memories from the 4-4?
Yes, actually, I do remember some of the other flats that we lived in, all kind of south side of Glasgow as well, that I still walk past quite regularly. So actually, I do remember them, strangely enough. But yes, pretty much all of every emotion that I could feel has been felt in these walls. So, yeah. Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know.
I'm curious what you remember about the places previous to it before 4 years old. Is it just kind of images, or is there like actual memories and experiences?
I do have quite specific memories. Do you want me to share? I don't know. I remember my fear of Santa Claus really kicked in one of our old flats. I think it was a Tweenies episode. And it was the Christmas episode. And the way they introduced Santa, I thought was totally outrageous, took me by surprise. And I just remembered this image of I was screaming and running down this really, really narrow corridor, red walls in this flat. And I just have a very vivid memory of hearing ho, 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 like Whoa. Behind me while I'm running down this corridor. It's quite traumatic. I think that's where my fear of burglars actually stems from. Oh my God, why am I talking about this now? But yeah, I always thought the concept of Santa Claus was creepy and I did not like it.
Well, it's someone breaking into your house.
Yeah, absolutely no way. No thanks.
Do you still have a fear of burglars?
Yeah. I think that is one of my biggest fears. I've thankfully never had to go through that. That is one of my biggest fears. I've actually written a few songs about it that might be coming out soon. So, yeah, it's so silly.
Are they tapping into that idea specifically, or is it more just looking at the emotion of fear?
I have been thinking about this quite a lot recently and where my fear is really coming from, because I really do have a big fear of intruders. I also have an obsession with zombie apocalypses and what I would do, how I would guard the house, how would I, all this kind of stuff, what kind of safety measures can I put in place to prepare. It's just ridiculous. But
have you actually prepped? Have you got a few things kind of kicking about? Got weapons in secret places?
Yeah. No, not yet. I do have a zombie book, tells you the basics, but you know what though, zombies come in all different forms. We cannot prepare for just one specific kind of zombie. And all the zombie films, they all have different kind of features. So it depends what kind of zombies are coming for us, You don't
want the ones that sprint.
Yeah, the ones in World War Z that can literally run 50 miles an hour. No thanks.
that was shot in Glasgow, wasn't it? George Square.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember going to see that actually, going to George Square and seeing all the yellow taxis. That was so cool.
Is that where the fear stems from?
No, I don't think so. I think I've always just had a fear of intruders. I don't know what it is. I remember we had this holiday in Spain. We stayed in this house that had glass windows all the way round. The family friend we were staying with mentioned how there was burglaries around that area. I just thought, how on earth are we going to cope with that? Glass, windows. And one night, a window did shatter, and we all thought, oh my God, intruder. That fear is, oh my goodness.
How old were you?
It was actually I think I was in probably second, third year high school.
That's older than I thought. I thought if you'd been like 6 or 7, I was like, we're tracing back the route of the fear. But
no.
That's older.
Yeah, I don't know maybe that's when it started, though. I don't know when it started.
At least you can see them coming if you've got glass windows, though.
Yeah. I don't want to see them coming, though. I don't know what I want. I'm just scared. That's it.
It's funny that you have this kind of fear of being physically people kind of intruding and coming into your space, but emotionally, you seem quite comfortable with completely putting yourself out there in your music. Is that because you're in control? Is part of it this idea of being out of control?
No, I think I have been very terrified. This whole process of releasing music hasn't really been... It's been challenging in some ways. I think you have to let go of this idea that I'm revealing my whole self to the world. I think it's important to remember that we are sharing fragments of ourselves, and they are magnified in some way. But I think it's important to kind of not think about things that way too much, because I think I would go a bit mental if I saw it that way.
It kind of ties back into Company Car a little bit as well. Like that feels like the song on the EP where more than any of them, you're kind of putting yourself out there and opening up a part. I guess it's because it's about coming to terms with a part of yourself.
Yeah, that song, again, maybe because, not all the lyrics are difficult to understand, but I feel like a few people have asked what the chorus lyrics mean. Maybe that relates back to me not being particularly direct, and kind of hiding behind metaphors. But yeah, that song I suppose is quite revealing.
We were speaking as well about the house a few moments ago before we went on the burglar tangent.
Yeah.
I was watching the video of you, I think it was for Tune, where you were performing Always Lovely down by like the docks in Govan. And you were actually speaking about I think you spoke about your grandfather in it, Jimmy.
Yeah.
So I was watching the clip you shared on Parkinson.
Oh, yeah.
What are your kind of memories of him and how he kind of informed you as a person and kind of impacted you?
He was just such a positive energy. He loved music. Yeah, in that same interview, I don't know if you saw it, but he spoke about the world of music and talking about how it's not always accessible for everyone. When he was really young, he didn't have the chance to really fulfill that love for music and explore the world of music because of his circumstances, being a working class kid. And that really was very emotional. And he loved music. He always encouraged me. Yeah, I feel very fortunate for my situation in that respect. And I think, he was a real voice for people.
Do you think you would have kind of had that gratitude for your situation in that perspective had it not been for him?
I definitely think that it helped me gain more of an understanding of what it can be like, just because it's so close to home. My mum as well speaks a lot about it and feels passionately about the topic. So I've always been quite exposed to stuff like that. So maybe that was because of my family's kind of political background.
Are you quite close with your family? Were you kind of close with your family growing up?
Incredibly, yeah, very much so. As I said, I do think, regardless, I would feel thankful for this. I feel thankful to have music in my life and to have the family that I do and to be able to do what I love and express myself in the way that I'm able to at the moment is I feel very, very grateful for.
Do you think part of the reason that you're able to kind of express yourself openly in art is because you had that foundation there with them? The way that you were able to be open with them and you were so close with them growing up, does that kind of give you a bedrock that you can build upon in order to be open with other people and kind of put yourself out there a bit?
I think so. My parents and my family have always been very encouraging. I think ultimately believed in me and thought it was something I could actually do with my life. You know, I studied philosophy and economics for all of 6 months at Glasgow Uni, and that was a scary decision to drop out and just be like, fuck it, I'm gonna do music. And I was very thankful that my parents actually supported that decision. So yeah, I'm very grateful.
Was that decision purely because of music, or were you just not enjoying it anyway?
It was probably a mix of both. I do think that I wasn't quite ready to jump into that world yet. I think I wanted to do it because I felt I should, rather than having a real genuine interest for it. Which, I think I feel way more interested in pursuing an education in other topics more now, and probably even more so in the next couple of years. But at the time, I wasn't ready to go into that world. I was spending my days in bars jamming with people and just gigging and hanging around musicians, and that was my life, that was my passion. I didn't want to do or think about anything else. You're
learning a lot from that though, and probably learning things that you can apply to your life in a very direct way, whereas economics and philosophy maybe feel a little bit more outstretched.
And it's meant that I've been able to meet so many great people who have similar interests and passions. So no, I wouldn't take that decision back.
Is there anything that you learned about yourself through making this EP that surprised you?
Now that I'm on the other end of it, I've learned to not be too picky and hard on myself. That was definitely something I was guilty of. Overthinking things, trying to micromanage everything that I was doing on social media or musically. And yeah, I think I've just let myself be a wee bit more after this process, just not taking everything too seriously. It's okay. It's fine. And I understand why I got worked up and everything, because as we've said, it's a scary process, releasing music into the world. Putting anything out into the world is scary. I think I've learned to just be a wee bit more relaxed about things.